All right, thanks so much everyone for joining. Congressman Israel, we're live.
Well, thank you very much, Natalie. Welcome, everybody, to the Institute of Politics and Global Affairs at Cornell University session on the Battlegrounds, a state of play. We have assembled an extraordinary panel of experts, Congressman Tim Ryan, who is in a meeting right now, but will break out of it as soon as possible and join us. Former Republican Congressman Charlie Dent from Pennsylvania, and Regina Zilbermints, the deputy campaign editor at The Hill in Washington, D.C. Before we get into things, I just want to acknowledge the presence in the audience of former Congressman Tim Bishop from New York, former Congressman Bill Enyart from Illinois, and the New York State Assemblyman Steve Stern. A very brief word about upcoming events by the Institute. We exist, by the way, to cultivate the next generation of public servants on both sides of the aisle. We want to deepen their discourse, raise understanding, and try and get them to revisit democratic norms and a respect for disagreements. That is our mission. On Thursday, October 22nd, we are presenting a program in conjunction with the 92nd Street Y on what to expect on November 3rd. That will be a panel. I'll be on it along with Congressman Dent and Congressman Ryans and my former colleague, Representative David Jolly from Florida. So David Jolly and I will be on a panel with the 92nd Street Y on what to expect. Thursday, October 29th, return to the classroom, Democracy in America, where we will be discussing the health of democracy going forward. Friday, October 30th, polarized partisanship, social movements, and the transformation of American democracy, where we will talk about how parties and movements have long provided a voice in U.S. politics, but they seem to be morphing now into just red and blue. We'll be discussing that. For this morning, the Battlegrounds, a state of play. We'll do a quick recap, 7 battleground states in the upcoming presidential election: Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, and Iowa. There are 3 states that Hillary Clinton won in 2016 that Joe Biden must protect: Minnesota, Nevada, and North Carolina. 3 states that Donald Trump won in 2016, and it is a strategic imperative for him to protect those states: Florida, Arizona, and Georgia. So you've got a group of about 12 states. Now this is fluid, but 12 states that are at the center of gravity in this presidential election. To take us on a tour of those states, we have, as I said before, assembled an expert panel. And I see that my dear friend, Congressman Tim Ryan, has joined us. Tim is Congressman Ryan. Can you hear us, Congressman?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You're a little frozen, but we get to look at your portrait, so that's nice. And you can speak.
Want me to try to call back in?
It's up to you. If you're comfortable going as is, we can, whatever you prefer. There you go.
Let me try to call back in. We might.
Okay.
Are we working? Good.
You're still a little frozen, but why don't we
I'll call you right back.
Okay, then I'm going to introduce our other panelists, Regina Zilbermints. She is the deputy campaign editor of The Hill in Washington, D.C. She covers presidential, Senate, House, and state level races. Prior to joining The Hill, she focused on local issues at the Des Moines Register in Iowa, so I assume you will have something to tell us about what's happening in Iowa, the Biloxi Sun-Herald in Mississippi, and the San Antonio Express News in Texas. Texas, believe it or not, considered to be a battleground state, so I look forward to hearing whether you agree with that punditry or not. Of course, former Congressman Charlie Dent is with us as well. Congressman Dent represented Pennsylvania for many years, the areas of Allentown, Bethlehem, and the environs. Republican. He's now a senior policy advisor to DLA Piper, where he provides strategic advice and counsel to clients on the federal, state, and local levels, and he advises them on things he really mastered in Congress: appropriations, healthcare, defense, veterans, homeland security, infrastructure, and energy, as well as trade and commerce. He's also, you see him on CNN. He is a frequent political analyst at CNN and a visiting fellow for the University of Pennsylvania. In Congress, he served 7 terms in the House of Representatives, representing, as I said, Allentown, Bethlehem, and other areas. He was always regarded, I think Congressman Ryan will agree with me, always regarded as just kind of a dead center member of Congress, not too left, not too right. He kind of led Republicans in a very moderate lane. He served as a senior member of the Appropriations Committee. Congressman Ryan and I served with him on the Appropriations Committee. He chaired the Subcommittee on Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and related agencies. And now Congressman Tim Ryan. He is serving his 9th term in the House of Representatives. He represents Northeast Ohio. In 2016, he was the surrogate of choice for Hillary Clinton. After President Trump was elected, Tim Ryan challenged Nancy Pelosi for leader of the House Democratic Caucus. In 2019, he was a Democratic presidential candidate. He's focused in his district and nationally on improving the economy and the quality of life, and fights every day to enhance economic competitiveness and help attract high quality, high paying jobs to every community in our country. He represents, final point on Congressman Ryan, we used to sit near each other and with each other and have conversations about the district he represents. It's Youngstown in Ohio, which is kind of a barometer on the American electoral mood. He has what's considered a blue district, but it's one of those districts that that's been buffeted economically. Manufacturing base has been buffeted, and that district could ultimately be kind of a swing district in Ohio and in the country. I want to welcome everybody. Let's begin with Regina for a quick top line overview. Tell us what your state of play is in those battleground states. We're going to give you about 3 to 5 minutes, and then we're going to move to Congressman Ryan. What's happening in those battleground states, Regina?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Like you said, we are kind of looking at a whole range of battleground states this go round. Those include Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, Ohio, Arizona, and Georgia. So with the giant glaring neon caveat that polls can be imperfect predictors, they're a snapshot of this moment in time, and a month is a long ways on the election calendar. Here's kind of where they stand right now. In Florida, which President Trump narrowly won in 2016, is leaning slightly toward Biden. It's kind of considered a must-win. And while polls showed Biden ahead there by pretty significant margins earlier in the year, the polls narrowed significantly before skewing a little bit more Biden's way over the past week or so. We've seen 2 polls that still show the 2 candidates neck and neck, 2 that have Biden ahead, 1 by double digits. North Carolina has just been neck and neck for the past several months, Biden holding a very, very narrow, within the margin of error lead. We're also looking at the so-called blue wall, that the states that Hillary Clinton lost in 2016 of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. Biden is holding a comfortable lead there, but those really are kind of must-win states, and the Democrats are looking very closely at those after 2016. So where it gets really exciting is a whole series of states that we didn't necessarily expect to be battlegrounds this time around that have emerged as such. You have Iowa and Ohio that the president won pretty comfortably 4 years ago. Polls are now neck and neck there. The Cook Political Report, the nonpartisan prognosticator, has them both in the toss-up column. And Biden is putting more money into those states, which can be an indication that they feel some confidence there. You have Georgia, which has not gone for a Democrat since, I believe, 92 or 96. We kind of expected it to stay pretty deep red this time around. But again, it's when the polls are neck and neck. It's rated as a toss-up this go around. And the candidates are both spending some money there, including Joe Biden. And then Arizona. I think we really didn't expect to see there what we're seeing. The state voted for, again, a Democrat in 96. And then before that, I think it was back in the 40s, the last time it went for a Democratic nominee. But again, the polls are leaning Biden's way. Cook rates it as lean Democratic. And both campaigns are investing some time and some resources trying to win the state. So what that all comes down to is that if Biden can hold on to Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, President Trump kind of needs to run the table in a whole series of the other swing states. He really would need Florida, North Carolina, Arizona, Georgia, Iowa, Ohio to keep it competitive. Like I said, a lot can change before Election Day, and we can delve a little bit more into those states later. But for now, I'll turn it back over to the congressman.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Regina. Appreciate that. Congressman Ryan, is Ohio really a battleground state in this presidential election? You're there, you have feet on the ground. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. I do think, technically it's a toss-up. I think there's a slight edge towards the vice president. We're seeing it in polling in my congressional district. In a recent poll we just got back, he's up about 5 points from where Hillary ended up. Has made significant gains in the last few months. We have a little bit of an older demographic in my congressional district, and a lot of seniors are really worried about how the president has handled the coronavirus. So you add that into, what we're seeing, for example, down in the Steve Shabbat district. Well, you're seeing it in the general polls. I mean, the Fox poll had Biden up 5, others had him up a couple or 3. Some have them neck and neck or up 1, but there's a slight edge moving towards Biden. But so you got my area of the state in the northeast quadrant, south of Cleveland, halfway between Cleveland and Pittsburgh, old, steel belt, rust belt, city of Akron, old rubber industry. And so you see in that district, especially in the Youngstown portion, they're almost like 2 different districts, Steve. The Akron portion also has Kent State, University of Akron. It's a little more college educated. In the Mahoning Valley, it was an old steel auto. And so what we're seeing in my district is an increase for Biden. But around the state, you're also seeing in the suburbs of Columbus, in the suburbs of Cincinnati, you're seeing the bottom fall out for President Trump. One indicator, and Regina probably knows this from following this, but in the Steve Shabbat race, which is Cincinnati and suburban Cincinnati, he has held that seat since 2010, held it before that. We won it, Steve Driehaus was in 9 and 10. The point is, he is now in one of the latest polls, he's down 5 in his congressional district. And Trump won that district by 7, and Biden's up in that district by 1. So if you see the increase in my district in the Northeast, and you see Biden cutting down the margins in suburban Cincinnati, which might as well be Mississippi, I mean, politically over the last 20 years, very, very red. So that puts Biden in play. He culturally connects, being from Scranton, which looks a lot like Youngstown and East Liverpool and Steubenville and Ashtabula County up on the lake, and Toledo, Lima, like all these small old mill towns, Portsmouth, they look a lot like Scranton. So he culturally connects with a lot of people. And again, I think they see him as mature and responsible. And lastly, and then, we'll get to Charlie, because he's in his infinite wisdom. Look how relaxed he looks, Steve. I mean, you retired members of Congress are like, I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm the only one with the tie on. I'm miserable. You're smiling.
You wanted to be president. Are you kidding me?
But, so the reality is that he connects with us. And, the COVID had a big issue, obviously. And then the debate. This is just the last thing I'll say. It's Ohio's Midwest, Iowa, Midwest, Wisconsin, Michigan. There's a certain sensibility that I think got violated last Tuesday during the debate. I think people were already starting to feel this way about the president. I think he completely crossed that line during the debate of civility, respect, being cordial to one another. And then the whole COVID thing highlighted being irresponsible around COVID, and then going to the White House, taking off your mask, riding around, making your Secret Service susceptible. Like, if you're a Midwestern person, almost regardless of your politics, unless you're completely in the Trump camp, you see that as very, very irresponsible. And I think that's why you're continuing to see things move in that direction. While Joe Biden, a week before was getting made fun of from wearing a mask, a few days later, Trump has COVID. So those kind of things all accumulate, and I really do think Ohio is going to turn blue.
Congressman, thank you very much. Congressman Dent, Donald Trump won Ohio pretty handily, he won Pennsylvania by less than a percentage point. Tell us what's happening in Pennsylvania right now. Your assessment.
Well, sure. Well, thank you. Yeah, Donald Trump won Pennsylvania by 44,000 votes, less than 1%. And by the way, it's good to see Congressman Tim Ryan. Now that I've taken up mindfulness like you have, I'm so much more relaxed. I feel great. And you made a great line during one of your debates for president where you said, I could go out there and get out of Congress and get a beach house. Well, that's exactly what I did. But a few things. One, in Pennsylvania, you have to look at Pennsylvania. I try to look at it as maybe two states. Pennsylvania east and south of the Susquehanna River. And then Pennsylvania, which is more of a northeastern state, call that part of the Boston to Washington corridor. And then there's, north and west of the Susquehanna River. And Pennsylvania looks more like a Midwestern state, more like Tim Ryan's area. And so as I see Pennsylvania, Donald Trump won Pennsylvania by 44,000 votes. And since his election, the suburban situation in Pennsylvania has eroded considerably for Republicans. And not just in the suburbs, the collar counties of Philadelphia, but I would argue in the suburbs of the Lehigh Valley, where I represented, suburban Harrisburg, which I also represented part of that for a time, the Hershey area, also suburban Pittsburgh. So the suburban situation has eroded considerably in 2017, 18, and 19, where Republicans were just wiped out in these county races. And some for the first time, counties that had never elected Democrats back to the Civil War. Even before that, they had never elected Democrats, actually went Democrat. So that's just something to think about. I would also argue that you should, the red areas in the state certainly have gotten redder. But I do think that Joe Biden will be able to limit Trump's margins a bit in some of those areas. I would watch 4 counties in particular in Pennsylvania. One which I represented, Northampton, which went from Obama to Trump in 2016. Erie County up in the Northwest also went from Obama to Trump. Luzerne County in the Northeast, which is adjacent to Lackawanna County, which is where Scranton is. So you hear Scranton, Wilkes-Barre. Well, this is the county of Wilkes-Barre. That county went from Obama to Trump in a big way. And the final county is Chester County outside of Philadelphia, which went from Romney to Hillary Clinton. So what I'm going to tell you, though, Luzerne County near Scranton, that is going to go for Trump again, probably in a big way. But I think Biden will maybe, shave the margin down a bit up there. Chester County, which went for Hillary Clinton, will absolutely go for Joe Biden, and probably by a bigger margin. But the counties to watch are Northampton and Erie, which could go back to the Democrats in this election. The final thing I'd probably like to point out about Pennsylvania, it's a more diverse state than people may recognize. Much of the population of the state is in the Southeast, Philadelphia and the 4 collar counties. And that's probably 35% of all the voters. Then you go to the next ring where I am, the North Lehigh Valley, Northampton, Lehigh, Berks, and Lancaster counties. That picks up a hell of a lot of voters too. So much of that vote, probably about half the votes come from out of that, what I'll call that more southeastern corridor. Now, we all talk about Scranton. The final thing I'll say on Scranton, that county, Lackawanna County, watch that one. Hillary barely won that county. Now, her father was born in Scranton, by the way. all roads lead to Scranton, I guess. But she barely won that county. That county could actually go to Trump this time. It could. Notwithstanding the city of Scranton, which I think is about 80,000 people, but Biden will win that city probably 2-1. And it's a very ethnic white area up there. It would probably not totally dissimilar to Tim Ryan's district. I always like to talk, since Steve, you're on Long Island. Billy Joel wrote the song Allentown. Well, he could have easily written it about Scranton or Youngstown or any another number of communities. The difference is, though, it probably more accurately reflects Youngstown, and Scranton than it does Allentown, actually, which has actually been pretty dynamic in terms of its regeneration and proximity to New York. There's a lot going on there. So with that, Pennsylvania is in play. I think that Trump right now is in deep trouble in Pennsylvania. I was wrong in 2016. I thought he would lose based on Hillary's performance in the southeastern counties. That was enough to win the state, but her vote collapsed upstate. I don't think Biden is not Hillary, and I don't think his vote will collapse like that, and he'll hold his own. Lose up there, but hold his own.
Thank you very much, Congressman. We're going to go back to each of our panelists and dig in a little bit in their ground, their landscapes. Let's start with Congressman Ryan. Congressman David Wasserman, who's for my money, one of the best prognosticators in the country, did a column for the New York Times where he listed the 10 places in America upon which this presidential election turns. And one of those counties was in your state. And I just want to read what he said, since Charlie took us on a little tour of counties in his state. I want to read you what Wasserman said about Wood County and ask you whether it does represent a changing trend. He writes, just south of Toledo, Wood County has multiple personalities. At its northern end are close-in Toledo bedroom communities. It has a strong affinity for rural culture. Its county seat, Bowling Green, hosts the National Tractor Pulling Championship each August. And its diesel-fueled culture might be balanced out by Bowling Green State University, a trove of Democratic votes. Wood County is a decent bellwether of the state. Mr. Trump carried it by 8 points in 2016, matching his statewide margin. In 2018, Senator Sherrod Brown, a Democrat, carried it by 11 points. The Biden campaign has run ads in the Toledo broadcast market, which conveniently covers part of Michigan too. Trump carries Wood County by 8 points. What does Biden have to do to cut into that lead in Wood County or counties in Ohio like it?
That's an interesting county, Steve. That's Bowling Green State University, where I graduated from. And so I know that county very, very well. It is the Harvard of the Midwest. If I could share, it's the Cornell of the Midwest. Let me just say that.
That's why you should have been president.
Sorry,
right there. Right there.
It's the Cornell of Northwest Ohio. And yeah, I mean, I think that's really accurate. I did not see that, but I think that's a pretty accurate depiction. And I think if I had to guess, you would probably see in those suburbs, which are, really suburban Toledo, very similar to what's happening in suburban Columbus. Same kind of thing. Ohio State, a decent economy, and people's sensibilities really being violated by Trump. And so I could see Wood County because, again, Sherrod Brown runs in Ohio very much about dignity of work, working class, basically a worker-centric focus. And that's what Joe Biden's doing. And I think that's part of the magic of his campaign right now at this point. Plays extremely well in Ohio, especially the northern tier, a lot of older industrial areas that I think he can pull back in. And he's doing okay with people with less than a college degree. And I think that will continue in Wood County. So I think that's probably pretty accurate. And then the interesting thing in Ohio, and this doesn't necessarily come through, and like Charlie said, well, Allentown is having this little renaissance. In Youngstown, we have an electric vehicle company that's coming into the old General Motors plant. General Motors is doing a partnership with the South Korean company around a battery plant. We've got the only energy incubator in the state, and it's crushing it around battery storage. We have one of President Obama's key initiatives around manufacturing innovation, where he was bringing these public-private partnerships together. The first one he did was in Youngstown around additive manufacturing called America Makes. That's generating a lot of development, and it's just starting to get to the point where we're starting to create jobs. So I share that with you because in my region, it's that. In Toledo, it's green energy. And Marcy Kaptur's the congresswoman there. She's chair of the energy in water subcommittee on appropriation. She's been working. First solar came out of Toledo. So my point is that when Biden's talking about build back better, when Biden's talking about infrastructure and broadband, which is kind of traditional stuff, he's also talking about putting hundreds of millions of dollars into research and development for the new economy and making college affordable, or 2 years of college free, or free technical schools, those kinds of things. That is tapping in very directly into what local communities are struggling to do. And the big question for us has always been, like Allentown and Scranton and others, how do you plug in to the global economy? We don't even know how to plug in. And that's why these people voted for Trump in the first place. I think they're seeing that his brand of demagoguery didn't help them much, just bashing China, bad trade wars, all the rest. But what Biden's doing, and it's very subtle and it's an intangible in this race, if you're doing economic development in Toledo or in Bowling Green, and you're on the Port Authority, and you're on the Economic Development Group, or you're in the regional transit area, what you see with Joe Biden is someone who really understands how to help you build out your economy. So there's a little bit of that going on too. And I think when you add all that together in a place like Ohio or Michigan, where Flint is trying to do it with business incubators and other things, and I'm sure they're doing it in Wisconsin and in Milwaukee and these other areas, that's connecting. And I think it's a subtle thing, but it's really powerful when people hear about his plan.
Jim, quick follow-up, and then we're going to go to Regina. Last night we heard the trade war with China come up. Kamala Harris brought it up. The vice president responded. How does that play in Ohio?
It's a cultural issue, especially in the North. In the South, there's a lot of exporting and our farmers want access to Chinese markets. They hear it as a net negative because they really lost in how Trump handled this. But traditionally, the North has been a little more protectionist. And I think she hit it home last night when she was talking about 300,000 jobs that have been outsourced, 18% increase in the trade deficit. So I don't think that issue around trade that Trump has really delivered on. And you notice he's not talking a whole lot about it. And the reason is that when the General Motors factory in my district closed, 4,000 workers, General Motors announced not long after that a new factory in Mexico. So he did not stop any of that from happening. The Carrier plant that he made such a big deal out of before he even got elected, I think they lost 600 out of the 1,300 jobs. They lost 600 and 700 went to Mexico or somewhere. So we've seen this continued erosion of manufacturing and losing, again, the trade deficit's up 18%, and losing on that issue of trade. And again, the last part of that question is Biden is looking very responsible, like there's more of a mid to long-term plan that we can get up, and Moody's has said it, as Kamala said last night, create 7 million jobs. So we got to hold those two thoughts at the same time. His lack of ability to really win these trade deals or the trade argument, and at the same time having zero plan on how to outcompete China around electric vehicles, batteries, charging stations, wind, solar, whatever the new economy is. There's really no plan for Trump. So now he's just complaining without any real agenda around building that new economy out.
Thank you. Let's go to Regina. We're going to take questions from our audience in about 6-7 minutes, but I want to make sure that we get 2 questions in for Regina and for Congressman Dent. Regina, you're looking at these battlefields. You're looking at these 12 or so states. Do you see at this point any potential surprises for either President Trump or Vice President Biden?
I guess outside of the 12 states we listed earlier, I see Texas as a potential surprise. Democrats have been talking about turning Texas purple for quite a few cycles now, but the Biden campaign just put a big infusion of cash into the state. Certainly at the Senate and House level, there's some competitive races there. So definitely not saying it's going to go Biden's way, but that is one potential surprise we're looking for. And then to the way north, I am looking at Minnesota, which Clinton won in 2016 without either candidate really spending any time or money there. This time around, they've both made visits. They've both put some money there. So I think that could be a potential surprise.
Interesting. Charlie, to Regina's point about these battlegrounds that are getting an infusion of cash, Congressman Ryan was commenting on how relaxed we look. We made one mistake when we left Congress, and that was we should have invested in a small radio station in Minnesota or Pennsylvania, because the amount of money pouring into those platforms is just extraordinary. Congressman Dent, so you talked about Pennsylvania as really two states. So if you're running a national campaign, if you're Joe Biden or Donald Trump, how the heck do you speak to those suburban women near Philadelphia, and at the same time speak to those voters in Lackawanna, in Luzerne, in Erie? How do you navigate that?
Sure. Well, what you don't do in suburban Philadelphia is carry on in a debate like you did a week ago. I mean, you don't do that,
Right.
and you don't ridicule wearing masks and be fairly reckless as he was in the aftermath with a little drive-by to his supporters. I wouldn't do those things, but essentially, like in Pennsylvania, we used to use a term, the so-called Casey Democrat or the Catholic Democrat. And we defined that as pro-labor, pro-life, pro-gun. That was, and you probably have some of that too in Ohio, Tim. But we don't use that term anymore. But that's still a predominant ethic in some areas like northeastern Pennsylvania, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre. The Pittsburgh area, I could say the same thing. Deer hunter country, the movie years ago. I would argue that's a message. But you get to suburban Philadelphia, and it's been an area of dynamic growth. I mean, a lot of biotech, pharmaceutical, highly educated people, higher incomes. And so you have to navigate that. And the way Republicans would win statewide, they would elect people like Dick Thornburgh and John Hines and Tom Ridge, people who are considered, pragmatic governing Republicans. You can call them common sense conservative, moderate, centrist, whatever you want. But that was a very appealing type of candidate. And our own Specter, too, of course, came out of tradition. So I think that was always the model for a Pennsylvania Republican to win statewide. And several of those, Ridge and Specter, were pro-choice, for example, on abortion. And by the same token, you had people like Governor Casey Sr., the senator's father, very strongly pro-life. And Democrats would run as pro-life, not just the Caseys, but others. So that's changed. So make a long story short, if you're talking in the Philadelphia region, you're going to focus your message on economic issues, and that's what you should be. And what Trump will do, I suspect, up in the in the more rural areas, again, the upper Northeast, what we call the T, the central area, and across the top, and even in southwestern Pennsylvania, I think cultural issues will play well outside of the urban areas. If he wants to go down that road, that won't hurt him at all. As you know, James Carville once called Pennsylvania. He said that Pennsylvania is Philadelphia and Pittsburgh with Alabama in between. He actually said it was from Paoli to Penn Hills with Alabama in between, but that's a detail. So there's a certain, that's a bit of an overstatement. I really never visited Alabama, but it must be an awfully nice place, I'd often say. But that's kind of where we are in Pennsylvania. So cultural issues, will play, outside of the Philadelphia region and outside the Lehigh Valley. Economic issues tend to play better, in those more affluent communities.
Natalie, why don't you instruct people on how to ask a question, and then come back to me. We'll let the queue populate, and then while we're doing that, I'm going to ask Regina something.
Sure. So if anybody from the audience has a question, we'll be taking them from the raise hand function. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the raise hand function. That will let us know that you have a question you'd like to ask our panelists and put you in the queue.
All right. While we're doing that, Regina, you're going to be working election night, I assume, right? You'll be at a desk, at a cubicle. So, what will you be looking for? What states, what counties will you be looking at initially that you think may portend the rest of the night, or maybe even the weeks, if not months?
Well, that night we'll definitely be looking at Florida. Like I said, it is a must-win state, kind of for both candidates, but especially for Donald Trump. And we'll especially be looking at some of the exit polling from Florida to see if Joe Biden is performing with the constituencies that he needs to ultimately win the state. We'll be looking closely at Arizona. I think actually Maricopa County is one that we'll be looking at. Donald Trump won it in 2016. It's heading toward Joe Biden this time around. It's a population center, and it could really be the key to swinging Arizona. Aside from that, I think we'll just be looking at whether the results are even coming in that night, how states are doing counting, and what we'll know and what we won't know when the day ends.
Very significant potential for that, what's called a red mirage and a blue shift. The red mirage is it's entirely possible that it will appear as if Donald Trump won the Electoral College on election night. And then you have that blue shift as all of those mail-in ballots are counted over the next weeks, perhaps even months. Of course, the Electoral College must be certified to the House of Representatives by December 14th, and the House of Representatives meets to certify on January 6th, I believe it is. All right, Natalie, why don't you moderate some Q&A for our distinguished panel?
Absolutely. So we have quite a few questions lined up here. The first one comes from Mr. Ted Beer. Mr. Beer, you are allowed to speak. If you could please unmute yourself.
Hi, very interesting with everything you had to say. Watching the debates last night and hearing the vice president dodge the issue of peaceful transfer. Steve, you know I've been questioning you on this.
Yes.
If Biden carries 50 states, even without the blue shift, Trump will still announce, I was cheated, the count's wrong, it's fraud, and he won't get out of office. What are we going to do about that?
Any of our panelists have a response to that possibility?
Well, I was thinking about getting a few guys from Youngstown to go to the Capitol. Yeah, you know, I know there's a lot of people worried about it. I think in the last week that I've been framing it like this: Trump has lost the crowd. I mean, he's lost the audience, like for the vast majority of the Americans, and they don't believe him and they don't trust him. And I don't think there's going to be any significant legitimacy to him saying something like that, especially if things keep moving in the direction that they're moving. And I don't really worry about that. I mean, I don't think he wants to end, getting drug out of the White House, for trespassing by some federal officers. I just don't think that's how he wants it to end. And, he'll have some time to digest from November and December into January to, he'll try to cause as much chaos as he possibly can. I don't think there's any question about it, especially knowing what potentially could come once he walks out of there. But I just don't think that there's not going to be a whole lot he can do. Like when Biden gets inaugurated, Trump is no longer president. Like Secret Service, his doctors, like nobody has to listen to him anymore. So I think that's going to be a significant change. It may be a little bit uncomfortable, but I don't think it'll get ugly.
We had Jeff Toobin on one of these Cornell Institute webinars just last week, and he wrote an exceptional piece for the New Yorker. I commend to your attention. Or you can watch that webinar. We record all of these. I do commend that to your attention. He had a really good, insightful analysis of what may happen in the weeks and months following the election. Natalie, let's go to the next question.
Great. So our next question comes from Barry Bradford. Barry, if you could please unmute yourself.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody. Congressman Ryan, I was very impressed with you during the debates when you were running. My question... I'm
sorry, can you say that one more time?
Well, it's unfortunate living in Illinois that we didn't get a chance to consider your candidacy, because I think you would have had a lot of appeal. My question for you is, the governor and secretary of state of your state, Ohio, are engaged in a tremendous amount of voter suppression. I wonder if you could comment on that and comment on whether or not those efforts could be enough to flip the totals in your state. Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, very good question. I hope not. We're having a struggle now over drop boxes, where the drop boxes are allowed to be at the county board of elections. But obviously, if you have a drop box, you want them to be spread around some of these counties, especially senior citizens and others who have a rough time getting out or have an underlying health condition and don't want to be out and about. And this has been consistent in Ohio for a long time. We used to have a golden week where you could come in and actually register to vote and then vote in the same week I believe it was in October. And so you're consistently seeing this where They are closing down, places to vote across the state. So this has been a pretty coordinated effort, especially in communities of color. They tried a couple years ago to dismiss college students who were registered to vote here if their car wasn't registered in the state. So all of the kids who come from out of state and bring a car to Ohio State or Bowling Green or Toledo or wherever, they would not be allowed to vote in the state of Ohio. And so they've tried every little angle to try to do this, especially because Ohio is a purple state where Obama won twice, Trump won, Sherrod Brown wins, Rob Portman wins. I mean, it's back and forth. I think that the motivation, I know people are saying, well, people are motivated to vote for Trump, but not for Biden. They're either motivated to vote for Biden or motivated to vote against Trump as Democrats, and the Trump people are motivated to vote for Trump. And so we've had lines at the Board of Elections all across the state, starting on Tuesday, all day long. Really incredible turnout very, very early. So I think it's going to be a lot of people who are thinking about doing mail-in are now going to show up because they want to just absolutely make sure their vote is counted. So I think we're going to be okay in spite of those efforts. And it just pisses people off too, to think that they're trying to suppress votes. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot more people really try to go and show up to make it happen. So I think we're going to be okay.
Congressman Dent, I just want to pose a similar question to you. Jeff Toobin, in his conversation with us and in his article in the New Yorker, said that one possible scenario could be this. Very tight election, no clear winner in the Electoral College. In Pennsylvania, your Republican legislature decides that they will disband the electors from Pennsylvania and submit a new slate of electors, all faithful to President Trump. But you have a Democratic governor who can decide that, no, it's not going to work like that. I'm going to submit the slate of electors faithful to Joe Biden. This all arises from the Electoral Count Act, which was passed by Congress in the 19th century and is rooted in the 12th Amendment. Congressman Dent, is that a possibility that your legislature may just disband the electors as they appeared on the ballot, substitute all Republican electors, and your governor may just go in the opposite direction?
Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? I don't think so. There has been a fair amount of press. I've heard comments from the leaders, the Republican leaders in the Senate in particular in Harrisburg, who have really kind of downplayed this or almost dismissed it. They don't see this happening. Now, in the event that Pennsylvania were a razor tight margin, and Donald Trump is beating his chest saying I've been robbed, then I think this could become a live issue.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I don't see it happening. I mean, that is the worst case scenario. And it's something that people are concerned about, not only I think in Pennsylvania, but some other states. Yeah. But right now, I'd say I wouldn't lose too much sleep over that right now. But because I do think the Republican leadership has been pretty damn clear that they don't want to go down that path.
Got it. Thank you. Natalie, let's take some more questions. We have about 15 minutes left.
Great. So we have a question to all panelists from the chat. Homer asks, what do you see as the impact of Trump deciding not to debate virtually?
Regina, would you start us off on that one? What do you see as the impact of President Trump's decision not to participate in the next debate?
I think it'll play very well with his base and not with anyone else. At the last debate, all Joe Biden needed to do was kind of stay the course, not mess up too badly. And it was Trump that really needed a boost to come from that debate. And we all saw what happened. I think on one hand, this gives him a chance to shy away from something like that happening again, while telling his base that I don't need to do this. I don't need to play down to how Joe Biden is being a wimp with his masks and his safety precautions. But for all the kind of soft voters, the leaners that the last debate may have scared off a little bit, this is certainly going to do nothing to reassure them.
Got it. Let's take another question, unless Charlie or Tim want to weigh in.
Yeah, just it'd be merciful. It'd be merciful if President Trump chose not to debate. I mean, I don't know about, I just, after watching that first debate, I felt a hell of a lot dumber after having watched it. I mean, it was just, it was that bad. So, but I mean, it might actually hurt him though if he doesn't show up. His base will like it, but I think much of the rest of the public will say, well, maybe what's he afraid of? But as an American citizen, I mean, I didn't get anything out of the first debate. I don't know that we'll miss much if they don't have a second debate.
Yeah, Steve, real quick. I mean, when you look at, and Regina knows this, the senior vote, out there in Arizona, Ohio, he's looking, because if he doesn't debate virtually, he's basically saying, I want to be live in a debate with all of the trappings that come with it, while I have a positive diagnosis of COVID. I mean, that's so irresponsible, because he's not saying he doesn't want to debate. He's saying he doesn't want to debate virtually. And so that is just continuing to cement that narrative that he is being extremely irresponsible.
Thank you, sir. Natalie, next question.
Our next question will come from Jonathan Misk. Jonathan, if you could unmute yourself, please, you're able to speak.
Jonathan, you with us? There you are.
Hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you all very much for this presentation, and thank you, Congressman Israel, for your leadership up at the Institute. It's a very important organization. I'm glad it's there. I just had a question about actually the Senate races. We've talked a lot about the presidential races, or the presidential race, excuse me, in this webinar, but not so much about the Senate. And I think some of the traditional or maybe emerging swing states are going to be implicated there. I think that the kind of accepted polling right now suggests that we have a very good shot at a 50-50 situation, with North Carolina, Maine, Arizona, and Colorado swinging to the Democrats and Alabama going back to the Republicans. But what about states outside of those? Where do you think the most likely chances of Democrats perhaps picking up an unexpected race are? I mean, some of the ones I think about are Kansas, Iowa, South Carolina now, but I'm interested in hearing your opinions. Thanks.
Regina, are you looking at some of those Senate races?
Absolutely. The ones we've been looking at, Arizona, Colorado, Maine, I think everyone thought that they could swing Democratic for a while, but Iowa and South Carolina are absolutely ones that we're looking at right now. Teresa Greenfield is really gaining on Joni Ernst. The last polls are really showing them neck and neck, and just talking with friends and former colleagues from back home, they're expecting a really tight battle. And then in South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, who I don't think anyone seriously expected to be in danger when this cycle started, is kind of fighting for his political life. His challenger is closing in the polls. He's raising a ton of money. Graham is on TV kind of begging for cash. So that could be a really exciting race that could go Democrats' way.
My two cent analysis this, the party that wins the presidency is going to win the Senate. I said the same thing in 2016. I'll say it again in 2020. Right now I think slight lean advantage to the Democrats. Earlier in the cycle, I thought it was slight lean Republican. Democrats are going to lose Alabama in all likelihood. So they need to net out a good 4 seats. So we'll see, but keep a close eye on it, because right now I think that like I said, Senate goes the same way as the presidency.
All right, thank you. Next question, Natalie. We have about 10 minutes left.
Our next question comes from Stephen Poland. Stephen, if you could unmute yourself, please. Great.
So thank you to the panel for a great presentation. My question is, most of your analysis is based on public and private polling that you might be aware of, but polling is only what people are saying over the phone or over the internet. It is not about voting. And I'm wondering, putting you inside the issue of voter suppression, which Congressman Ryan earlier addressed, whether there's any evidence out there as to what the splits may be in terms of people's willingness to take the risk of voting, going to the polls, waiting on long lines, possibly in an environment that they're not comfortable with in a polling place, and whether that is likely to disadvantage the Democrats, given the fact the Democratic vote is largely in the big cities, where those problems are going to be more severe. So I wonder if any of you seen any data or any evidence that's not just anecdotal on that topic.
Any of our panelists?
Yeah.
You seeing anything?
Like I said, I've seen amazing energy this week. I think in part, I talked about 20 people in the line in Youngstown at 7:30 in the morning that each were there because they wanted to be the first one in. So I think you're concerned about not wanting to be in that environment, but everyone had their masks on and, doing everything right, and temperatures getting taken and all of that. So, and then, taking it by mail. But the issue with the mail is that, with older people, their frequency of, not filling things out properly is a little bit higher than the normal voter. So that could hurt Biden, for example, if he's, doing well with older voters, but who knows how that breaks down. So I think it's hard to tell. I don't have any solid information to give you.
In Pennsylvania, I don't see any real issues of voter fraud or voter suppression. What I do worry about are voter failure or system failure. That is, we have just in Pennsylvania for the first time moved to absentee balloting with no excuse. You used to be able to vote by absentee with an excuse. You were sick or you're out of the county on that day of the election. That's the only way you can vote absentee. Now you can vote absentee for any reason. And so this is the first time we're doing it. We did it in the primary and we had some kinks, with a lighter turnout primary. There were some challenges that we faced. And now with the mail volumes, the problems at the post office, I'm concerned that the system might not be ready for it in Pennsylvania. And then the flip side of that is because of the coronavirus, COVID-19, will in-person voting, will we have enough election workers, poll workers to make sure that is carried off, effectively, and that could lead to, disruptions and long lines. And by the way, in Pennsylvania, I noticed too, the long lines just weren't in the urban area; they were in the Republican areas too. We have had problems with this. It's not just a situation confined to many. In some states, they say it only happens in Democrat areas. Pennsylvania, frankly, I noticed it happened in a lot of the Republican areas far more than in the urban areas. So watch for system failure in Pennsylvania. I hope it doesn't happen, but that's what keeps me up.
On this subject, for those of you who are interested, we had a conversation like this with Congressman Jerry Conley, who's the chairman of the Postal Subcommittee. He talked specifically about this. We also had a conversation with Senator Amy Klobuchar about her bipartisan legislation, co-sponsored by Senator Susan Collins, that would make absentee balloting easier and would help fund the post office to process this volume. Let's take the next question.
Okay, great. Our next question comes from the chat from Randy. She asked, can you talk about voter turnout and any voter suppression issues that you can see going on in battleground states?
I don't really have anything to add, Steve, from what I already said. I don't know if anyone else does.
Yeah, I don't have much to add.
You guys, Congressman Dent, Congressman Ryan, you're not seeing any signs of active voter suppression?
No.
I haven't seen any, people at the polls, intimidation or anything like that. Okay. I think there's a lot of people concerned about it, but I did not see any the other day when I was out, nor heard anything the rest of the week.
Yeah, Donald Trump made a bit of a noise during the debate about some situations in Philadelphia. And to be fair, we've had problems in Philadelphia over the years, but he made some noise about poll workers being denied access to some meeting. Well, poll workers or poll watchers, they're allowed in election day. They're appointed. It's not like there's some meeting that they weren't allowed into. It really, he kind of stirred up something that really was a non-issue last week.
Thank you. Let's take another question, Natalie. We have time for, I think, 2 more.
Sure. So we have a hand raised by Fred. Fred, if you would unmute yourself, please, you can go ahead and ask your question.
I was startled yesterday. Well, thank you for this discussion. It's been
Fred, where are you from? Where are you from, if I may ask?
North Carolina.
All right. Also an important state.
But I grew up in New York City and went to school for 10 years in Northern California. They were 10 years when there was a lot of things going on in Northern California.
Right.
Mike Lee just made us a tweet that democracy isn't the objective. Liberty, peace, and prosperity are. We want the human condition to flourish. Rank democracy can thwart that. As a position of the Republican Party and someone who's just come down with COVID, I wonder if anyone else finds that as remarkably disgusting a political comment as I do.
Panel?
I'll let my Republican friend take that.
Sure. Yeah, I just I hadn't seen the tweet until you just read it. It's certainly very odd. Yeah, to say you support freedom and liberty, well, democracy is it's part of those are democratic values. So I mean, I'm not sure what the point. I'm not sure the point is that he's making there. To be perfectly candid, look, I've always said democracy. For democracy to work, yeah, any country can have an election, but you need a free press, an independent judiciary, you need rule of law, you need all these prerequisites. So I'm not sure what his point was there. It doesn't seem to be particularly coherent, and maybe because he had COVID, has COVID, maybe that's affecting his thinking. But having had COVID, I stopped tweeting for a few weeks.
Fred, if I may, I think you're onto something. The next major initiative of the Institute will be to launch something called the Campaign for the Future of Democracy. It's being spearheaded by a former Republican member of Congress, Susan Molinari from New York, and myself. And we're going to take a look at the circumstances that enabled us to get into a situation where a Republican senator would tweet something like that, where 30% of the American people have a predisposition to authoritarianism, where nearly 50% of the American people say that if their choice for president doesn't win, then violence may be justified. If you read Anne Applebaum's Twilight of Democracy, or you read Levitsky and Zyblatt's book, How Democracy Dies, it tells you how precarious, how fragile democracy is, and how much more fragile it has become, not over the past 4 years, quite honestly, but over the past 10 to 15. So visit our website. You can just Google Cornell Institute of Politics, and it'll take you right to the website. And read more about this campaign for democracy. We have time for one final short question, and then I'm going to properly thank our guests. Natalie?
Great. So the last question that we have will come from the chat from Norman. He asks, how do you see the fact that Kamala and Biden have not responded to the issue of possibly stacking the Supreme Court?
Good question. Regina, do you have I want to make sure we get you, and do you have a sense of how that plays out in those battleground states refusing to talk about whether you're going to support stacking the Supreme Court?
No, I think not answering that question might be an issue in another election cycle, but I think not this one. No, for that non-answer, anyone can give you 7 non-answers by Donald Trump in the last debate, or Pence there. I think certainly it's an issue for the people that care about the future of the Supreme Court, which is many voters, but that one just does not seem to be scratching the surface of the issues people care about right now, which are coronavirus, the economy, just getting out of this pandemic.
Tim, Charlie, are you hearing of this from your former constituents, the issue of court packing?
No, I mean, it's so far down the line. I mean, and I appreciate that really not engaging, because these are the red herrings that'll get spun out on Fox News. Say hello to Bear on Fox News. And so really you've got to be careful in today's environment to really be able to steer away from those kind of issues that can distract from Build Back Better. I can do better with COVID. The president's irresponsible. We got to work on, the middle class. And I think, and rebuilding the middle class and wages and all of that stuff. And Steve, I think that ties to your point too about the question on democracy. That is inextricably linked to the economic status of the vast majority of the country. I think we got Trump for economic reasons. Like, people just saw no path forward from either political party, and he ran as an independent. And so those issues around electoral college, packing the Supreme Court, you know, and some of these other issues that make their way into the conversation. I think it was very, very smart to kind of steer away from that issue in the middle of this, in the last, you know, 3-4 weeks.
Charlie?
The only thing I would add to that is that, look, this election is largely about the President of the United States, his conduct in office. It's about the coronavirus. It's about that response, and it's also about the economy. Those are the big issues as I see them. Everything else is further down, as Tim mentioned. But I don't think it's a good look for Democrats, though, to ignore this court packing issue. If I were the Democrats, I think they ought to start talking about, and Republicans ought to talk about maybe term limits on the Supreme Court, or age limits like we have for federal judges, instead of these lifetime appointments, and you know how octogenarians stay there maybe longer than they should. You know, may she rest in peace, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but could have made a case she should have retired a few years ago because of her health. Maybe if we had age limits or term limits, that would be a smart thing. If the Democrats were to run the tables and win, I think they would be ill-advised, though, to go down that path of court packing or DC statehood. I think they would be seen as extreme proposals. And so I don't think it's an issue in the upcoming election so much, but I think it could become a very big issue if they pursue this from a policy perspective in the next term.
Before I properly thank our guests and say farewell to them, let me remind all of our participants, Thursday, October 22nd at 7 p.m., the Institute of Politics and Global Affairs at Cornell will be joining the 92nd Street Y for an extension of this conversation, what to expect in the election, with former Republican Congressman David Jolly and myself. Congressman Ryan, former Congressman Dent, Regina, thank you for your extraordinary expertise, and we do hope you'll come on again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Always great to be with you, Steve. Thanks for all you're doing. Bye, Regina. See you, Charlie.
Yeah, take care. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Enjoy the beach, Charlie.
Jersey Shore, baby.